In this video, we'll talk about a couple methods for finding the intersection of two lines. The basic problem looks something like this. When we have two lines in general position, they cross at some point, and we'd like to find the coordinates of that point. Just a quick note though, if the two lines have the same slope, then they're actually parallel lines and they don't cross at all. In rare cases, it's possible that it might not be obvious from looking at the equations that you're given, but it's possible that the two lines that you have are actually the same line, in which case they would cross everywhere. But we're going to talk about the general situation where we only have one intersection point. One relatively simple case is when both lines are in the form y equals mx plus b. So let's work through an example. We have the lines y equals 2x minus 3 and y equals negative x plus 9, and we want to know the point where they intersect. Well, notice that in my two equations, they both have y equals, so y equals 2x minus 3 and y equals negative x plus 9. So if y equals both of those things, then both of those things have to equal each other. And that's the principle that we're going to use. These two things are both equal to y, so they both equal each other. 2x minus 3 equals negative x plus 9. And that gives us an equation that we can solve. So let's add x to both sides. And let's also at the same time add 3 to both sides. We're going to move the variables to one side and the numbers to the other side. 2x plus x, that's 3x. Negative 3 plus 3, that cancels out. Negative x plus x, that cancels out. And 9 plus 3 is 12. Divide both sides by 3, and we get that x equals 4. Now we're not done at this point, because we're looking for a point, and a point has an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. But what this x equals 4 tells us is that the answer that we're looking for is 4 comma something, but now we have to figure out the something. But this point is on both of these lines that we were given. So we can take that x equals 4 and plug it into whichever line we want. We can plug it into the first equation, or we can plug it into the second equation. It doesn't matter. We're going to get the same answer both ways. So I'm just going to plug it into the first equation because it's the first one. But there's nothing really preventing me from plugging it into the second one. So I have y equals 2x minus 3. I'm going to take that 4 that I figured out, and I get y equals 5. But you should check and make sure that you get 5 if you plugged that x equals 4 into the other equation. But you really will, and so the answer that we're looking for is the point 4 comma 5. Okay, now things get a little bit more complicated when the lines are in general form. We're going to follow this 3-step procedure. We're going to start by solving one of the equations for one of the variables. We're going to then substitute that into the other equation and solve. And then we're going to use either equation to find the remaining variable. So here we have two equations in general form, 2x plus y equals 10 and 3x minus 2y equals negative 13. So the first step is to solve one of these equations for one of the variables. And the hint here is to try to choose the easiest combination of equation and variable. Try to find the one that makes you do the fewest arithmetic operations to get that variable by itself. So if we look at the second equation, for example, 3x minus 2y equals negative 13. We could solve this equation for y, say. We would subtract 3x from both sides. That cancels out on the left. We get negative 2y equals 13 minus 3x. Sorry, negative 13 minus 3x. And then we would have to divide both sides by negative 2. And that gives us negative 13 minus 3x, all divided by negative 2. But notice how many steps that took, and also notice how ugly that solution for y is. Now sometimes we won't really have an option. Sometimes the only option will be to get multiple steps and to have something that looks sort of nasty. But I want you to notice that if we had instead chosen the first equation, 2x plus y equals 10, and we had chosen to solve for y, all we have to do is subtract 2x from both sides. And we get y equals 10 minus 2x. That was a lot easier, and my solution for y looks a lot simpler. So that's what I mean when I say choose the easiest combination. So I'm going to choose this second one. I'm going to use this y equals 10 minus 2x for my next step. It's not wrong to use this more complicated solution that we got over here. It's just going to make our lives harder if we choose that more complicated method. So choose the easiest combination you can find. Try to avoid creating ugly fractions with lots of minus signs. Try to make your life easier by choosing the easiest combination. Okay, so from step 1 we know that y equals 10 minus 2x. What do we do with that? Well, we got that from the first equation. So now when I say substitute it into the other equation, that's this second equation. So substitute means I'm going to replace that y with what y equals, 10 minus 2x. And make sure you use parentheses here. And now we're going to solve. Notice that this equation only has x in it, so we're going to solve for that value of x. So we've got to simplify this. We're going to distribute our minus 2. Minus 2 times 10 is minus 20. Minus 2 times minus 2x is 4x. And that equals negative 13. 3x plus 4x, that's 7x. We want to get x by itself, so we're going to add 20 to both sides. That gives us 7x equals 7. And we divide both sides by 7. We get x equals 1. So now we're done with step 2. Now we're almost done. Now in step 3, since we know that x equals 1, we can use either equation to find the remaining variable. Just like in the easier method that we saw earlier, we can take that value and plug it into either one of these equations. Once again, the first equation is a little bit simpler, so we're going to go ahead and use that first equation. So I'm going to replace the x by a 1. 2 times 1 plus y equals 10. 2 times 1 is 2. Subtract 2 from both sides, and I get y equals 8. So my answer here is the point 1, 8. I know that x equals 1 from earlier, and I just figured out that y equals 8. So 1, 8 is the answer that I'm looking for.